get started in just a minute here. I just want to pull up the notepad.
Yeah, okay.
Shoot. Notepad. Chat room.
Oh, one thing I didn't do, Chris, was copy the agenda in it. If you wanted to put that up, I don't know. We can do that after the status too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can also flip it up, I think. So I think I'm ready. Let's see. Chat room. All right. So good morning, everyone. This is the LSR working group. We've got a 2-hour session, I think. Yeah. Here's our note well. You've been seeing all week long, hopefully. Basically says that by participating, you agree to follow all the process and policies and everything else there on that slide. Oh yeah, let me go back. So also the masking, please wear your mask unless you're talking at the mic or consuming water, I guess, because you're tired vocal cords from talking all week. I don't think that there's, oh yeah, and if you're going to go to the mic, please, oh, well, in any case, please sign into the on-site tool. That's what's you can find it on the agenda. It's one of the buttons to the right, and that will record your presence instead of doing the old signing the blue sheet thing. And in that tool, you can select the hand icon if you want to go into the queue. So that way we can manage the remote and local queue fairly. I think that is all the administrivia. AC, do you want to do the slides, the status now?
Yes. Next slide. I'm just, while I'm doing all of the status, I'm just going to point out the salient drafts because I want to leave as much time for the presentations and discussions. Next slide. Here, there's been a development here. RFC 9127 will soon go off 48. So once that's published, it'll unblock the OSPF and ISIS Yang models. And once we do that, I think in the next months, we're working on resurrecting interest in the follow-on, the Yang models based on this. I know a lot of us that were working on Yang models weren't interested in doing anything as long as we were waiting for this. Next slide. Okay, this one's still waiting on the Flex algo. We'll cover that later. Next slide. These are the drafts completed last call. We really need the Flex algo done because not only is there references to it in a lot of the SR drafts, there's also a lot of our you'll see that today, a lot of the working group documents that we have are based on this. So this is really a foundational work that we need to get to the ISG and published. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This extension's for SRv6. This is ready. I've reviewed it once. They incorporated my comments. We're going. There's an. I think at least I'm pretty sure. I think I've heard it second party, but I've heard Huawei has implementations of this draft. So we're going to do a last call shortly after the IETF 114. Oh, and there's also references in drafts and other working groups to this draft. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, no, stay here. Oh, part. Dynamic flooding for dense graphs. The working group did a lot of work on this. It's, I say implementations proceeding. This is kind of slowed down. There's been a lot for one reason or another. The implementations, there's one implementation of it. We talked about the offers and we're thinking of targeting experimental and publishing it. Now, a lot of drafts in LSR, and this phenomenon is not unique to the LSR working group, but a lot of drafts in LSR, nobody's really interested in them, but the authors. This was one of those exceptions. We had a lot of interest across the whole working group for the dynamic flooding, and I think it's a real priority to get this done. People can disagree with me on the list if they want, but next slide. Fast flooding is another one where we had interest across the working group. I'm going to be talking to or Chris and I will be talking to the authors and seeing when they feel that it's ready for a working group last call. I know that Bruno just did another very incremental update, and I will. It would be good if people would look at that again. Next slide. I believe those were the only ones I really wanted to talk about in the status. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, we're targeting interim around September 7th. That drafts don't make, for drafts that didn't make the agenda. Now, one thing about this, we have these drafts now, and I've seen some discussion on some of these drafts, and it looks like some of these drafts may be unnecessary. So we're not going to have presentations. We're going to try and at least read these drafts or presentations on drafts that are definitely unnecessary. Anyway, but that's the time we're targeting. Okay, I'm done.
All right, thanks, AC. Let me see if I can share. No, share screen. All the slots. Oh, I got to close the presentation, I think. There we go. So just putting the agenda up here in case anyone wanted to bash it. We just went through one. Number 2 is canceled. And we have, we're going to push to get all the way through 9 in the allotted time. But we wanted to leave time for discussion. So everything else is dependent. We might be able to get to these if we have time. But if not, this is what AC was talking about, these plus anything new might. Oh. Yeah, look at that. Was it up? Was it ever up? No. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I can see it. I can see it on. Here we go. No, I screwed up. User error. So Right, so here's the agenda, and then we're going to get to 9, and then anything after if we have time. Otherwise, those move to the interim. And with that, let's move to the ASLA drafts.
Chris, I actually wanted to ask a
You wanna-
question.
Yes, go ahead, Les.
So, if I can say this in a friendly way, I think we haven't progressed any of the documents that have gone through last call in quite a while. And I'm just wondering if there's, we can get some update on that, if there's some way to get additional resources put on that.
Are you speaking of things that have gone to the IESG or things that are in working group last call?
I'm really speaking of things that are in the AD's hands. Sorry, John.
John's at the mic, so that's why I was
Yep.
asking.
Nope, no offense taken, Les. It's a perfectly valid question. So I've communicated this to the chairs already, but all the authors deserve some, communication too. My queue is pretty severely backlogged. Have taken several steps to let me get through it faster. It will take a while for those to actually show up on your dashboards and in terms of results. I'm not generally a person that likes making excuses. I like showing results instead, but it will take a while for the results to actually start appearing. In terms of what you can do to help, if I think of anything, I will surely let you know. I wish I had something more to tell you, but that's what I got. I'm all ears if you've got ideas. I don't know if we want to take up agenda time on that or not. I leave that to Chris.
No, here's a real quick one from me, speaking as working group chair. I think that a timely review would be, that is less extensive, would be preferred to one like 4 months out. That's my, or 4 to 6 months out. And I believe, it's already been through the working group. We have the people in this working group who have implemented these protocols. Maybe we need to, I know at least some of the drafts, we don't get everybody to review them, but that's just my opinion.
That is fair. One of the things that I try to focus on when I'm doing a review is hitting things that I'm fairly sure that will, are going to trigger other IESG members anyway. So I'd rather they trigger me than trigger, a discuss from somebody else down the line. But yes, quick and timely, and then getting through the discusses might be preferable to waiting forever. I hear you.
Les, are you happy with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a friendly question, but I think, and I have a lot of respect for John and for how much work it takes to be an AD, but somehow I think we need to make some progress.
Okay. Well, Les, you're on the mic still, and I think you're presenting now. So let me get rid of my screen. And then click the little icon next to you. That's interesting. Do you get to pick? Does it show
Apparently.
You? Yeah. So pick ASLA or that.
That works.
Yep.
Okay. So this is an update on the 2 BIS drafts for ASLA for ISS and OSPF. Here's the bit of history. About a year ago, there was some discussion on the list that there was some confusion regarding the specification of how zero-length ABM advertisements were used. There's a pointer to the thread. The outcome of that discussion was an errata for each of the RFCs. In May, John reviewed the errata and felt that it would be more appropriate to pursue this as a BIS RFC. So we published the BIS drafts in June. We got some additional comments from Bruno and Shraddha beyond what had been written in the errata. We've incorporated those. This is not a complete set of diffs. This is just a quick summary of the significant changes. We clarified that for the SRTE application, that this is data plane independent. It applies to SRMPLS and SRv6. That was input from Shraddha. We clarified the use of the zero length ABMs, the LBIT. These are essentially things that came out of the original errata. And we also clarified that when we have legacy routers in the network who are only going to be using legacy advertisements, that we must not only continue to advertise legacy, but we must not advertise ASLA because the legacy routers will not be looking at those. That was another request from Shraddha. So next steps, there's no substantive changes here. There's only clarifications. So I would really like to fast track this. And I haven't discussed this with the working group chairs, but this is the plan that I have in mind. I'd like to see these both BIS drafts immediately adopted. I'd like to get last call within one IETF cycle by the next meeting. And I know John has graciously volunteered to try to speed the ISG review by constraining it just to the changes, not to reviewing the entire contents of the original RFCs. And John, I'll certainly take you up on that. I hope we can do that. And that's it.
Okay. Oh goodness, I was going to ask the room a question, but now I need to do this differently. I'm going to do a raise hands thing to see if anybody objects to going immediately to adoption call on this, if I can find. Thank you, share. This is why you do the thing. Okay. Show of hands. There we go. Any objection to immediate adoption? All right, so there we have a, go ahead and click.
So raising hand means you object or you don't object.
Raising hands means you object. So don't raise your hand and we'll go to immediate adoption. We'll also, yeah. I don't, it seemed to have ended on me. Well, there was 20, oh, that, it says there's 21 participants and 21 didn't raise their hand. I know,
sounds
that's
good.
why I don't know why, but it's 21 and as soon as it hit the number, it just stopped the tool.
I guess that's consensus.
Yeah, if any, I'll give a few, just another moment here. If anybody wants to get in the queue if they object.
Yeah, I'm not getting in the queue to object. I'm just getting in the queue to say, I mean, you could do the show of hands thing again, but I think you also have discretion as chairs to just do this if you.
Yeah. I was just getting the feel for the, I don't think that we're going to see any objections. Okay. All right. Thank you, Les. I think that we will do that then, unless we hear something in the back channel where somebody anonymously didn't want to talk or something. Who knows? Can't imagine why. All right. So next up is Chongfen, Zhidong. Using ISI's multi-topology. Okay, so who's going first?
Actually, I thought they had one slot for the two VTN drafts.
They
They were
do,
gonna-
but they have two presenters. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I'm the
Chongfen,
first. I see.
I give you, you have a control, so pick the presentation you're presenting and run.
Yeah, I will try to control the slides. Can you help me to control the slides?
Yeah, so you should see a list of slides available
Yeah.
on your,
Yeah.
pick your presentation and then you'll have control.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. This presentation about using SSMT multi-topology for segment routing with VTN. A VTN is a virtual annealing network with the required topology and resource characteristics. And it could be used as an annealing to meet the requirements of one or a group of VPN plus services in the context of network slicing. This concept is similar to the network resource partition defined in this draft. Furthermore, the resource-aware SID represents different set of resources allocated on network segments for packet processing. And so with SR-based data plane, SID can be used to represent both topology instructions and the network resources allocated by network load to a VTN. So this document describes the mechanisms of applying multi-topology to build SR-based VTNs. And it is applicable to networks where the required number of VTN is small. ISS multi-topology routing is used to create a dependent topology in one network. So MT-based TLVs are introduced to carry topology-specific link state information. This provides the capability of specifying the customized attributes of each topology. When each VTN is associated with a dependent network topology, multi-topology ID could be used as an identifier of VTN control planes. So MT routing can be used with ISR-based display. In order to perform constraint-based path computation for each VTN on the network controller of the ingress nodes, the network resource attributes and other attributes associated with each VTN can be advertised. For multi-topology network, topology-specific SR MPS SID or SR V6 location SID can be advertised based on SS, SR, and SR V6 intentions. Topology-specific link bandwidth advertised for different VTNs. Other IT attributes may also be advertised in topology-specific manner. Since this document was adopted last year, several updates have been made. For the comments received, we clarify that both resource-aware SID and normal SID can be used with this mechanism to build SR-based VTNs. And then we also published the text about the forwarding planes operations. And we describe the scalability considerations and the target network scenarios. And several editorial change has also been made. implementations show that this mechanism works well, and the content of the document looks stable. So we think that it is ready for working group last call. When more reviews and comments are welcome, as usual. So I'm done. Thank you.
All right, we have two people in the queue. Les, you're up first.
So there was a discussion when this draft was up for working group adoption, that it didn't really have any significant content, but we adopted it anyways. But the only way that the content in this draft is meaningful is if the working group actually takes on the work of supporting VTN or VPN plus, whatever name you want to give it, and we have not done that yet. So at a minimum, this draft should not progress until the working group takes on the actual VTN extensions and decides to move that forward, which we may or may not do. So I strongly object to moving this to last call.
Okay, AC.
Yes, AC Lindum Cisco Systems. I think that why would we take this to working group last call when the drafts it's dependent on, because this is kind of an after the fact, the resource aware SIDS and the T's draft aren't in working group last call. I mean, I don't know why we jump this up just because it's a very simple draft when those aren't when those things aren't done.
Well, there's nefarious reasons to do that kind of a thing, but I think we could just wait, right?
Yeah,
That's, two people have now said that.
we'll take this discussion to the list, but I don't see a reason. You know, it's kind of like doing BGA-PLS extensions before the base specification is done.
G?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I just like to say that firstly, this is an informational document, and as we follow the suggestions after the adoption, we have made the resource-aware seeds optional for this document so that we can allow both resource-aware seeds and the normal seeds to be used within this mechanism to build the SR-based VTNs. So it does not rely or depend on the resource-aware segment draft, actually. And what I want to say that I just want to ask maybe AC to help to clarify which document we need to wait for before this one can be.
I mean, I'm not. I mean, I read the document again, but what about the work in T's to define what a VTN is? Is that done? Is that on the editor queue, or where is that? I mean, on the AD queue, or where is the VTN, the whole VTN concept? Where's that document?
Yeah, that is in the VPN Plus framework, and we have planned to make that one go to last call maybe after this IETF meeting.
Okay, yeah, when
Right.
that goes to call, come back.
Okay, so these
Right.
two need to move forward together. I mean.
Yes, we don't want to produce work in this working group that refers to work that isn't done, you know, that's based on something that isn't done somewhere else, right? I mean, it's just pretty natural to progress things in the correct order.
Okay.
It's not I don't think that anybody's saying that this wouldn't progress normally as long as everything goes the way it should, but, you know, let's do things in the right order. Okay.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
John, did you want to talk, or are you?
Yeah, Ketan Talaulikar Arcus, a quick comment or rather a suggestion to the authors. See, there isn't anything which changes IGP mechanism or protocol operations in the draft. It's only informational. There is a similar draft in Spring, which covers, I would say, about 50 to 60% of the similar content. My suggestion to the authors is, why don't you just move everything from this draft into the Spring draft, and then this draft is not required anymore.
Ketan, which
the
document are
the Spring draft,
talking
which
about?
is the draft which is adopted in Spring. You can just roll everything from here into that.
I'm not sure that one is related to IGP extension, or it's just like a about
It's
the
an architect. It's an
semantics also.
architecture. It's more
Right.
architecture description, which is similar to this. There is this just architecture and description, just informational. You can just roll the sections into that, and I guess. But I mean, I'll leave it to the chairs as well. But just a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank
I
you.
mean, for the IGP extensions, we really don't want to put all those springs. I mean, we've kept them here, or the other SR stuff. I don't think we want to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can
Right,
take
but
that.
So we have,
The next.
we have two
Yeah, maybe we can
presentations. This
take it
first,
to-
this first one doesn't have any extensions in it, right? So I guess that's something, it should at least be looked at to
Oh,
see if
yeah,
it makes
okay.
sense.
Right, I
Okay,
guess it
let's-
doesn't have extensions. Yeah, this one may, I guess I guess I'd be all right with that. True.
Gets a wider spread then too, since this is really about how to do things, right? It's just informational. Okay, well,
Yeah.
there's only 6 minutes left for the other one. Why don't we do that one? Is that going to be G? Are you presenting that?
Yes, I'm the next one.
Let me, I've got some odd icons. The same thing as, I see. I have to actually cancel the countdown timer to get access to the, okay. All right, you should have a list of presentations
Yeah,
in
I
front of
can
you.
see the list.
Okay,
Okay, can you see the slides?
yes.
Okay, so this is an update about the draft on using the Flex algo for the segment routing based VTN. I'm presenting on behalf of the co-authors here. First, about the background, I think this is similar to the previous one. The difference is this document is describes a mechanism of applying the Flex algo to build SRVTNs. Okay, the mechanism in this draft is when the VTN is associated with an independent Flex algo, the Flex algo ID can be reused as an identifier of the VTN in the control plane. And we can use the Flex algo to describe the topology constraints of the VTN. It can be applied to either the default topology or it can be applied to a multi-topology. And with the segment routing Flex algo extensions, algorithm-specific SRCs can be advertised based on the RFC 8667 and as a draft for the ISS SRA6 extensions. Here, we make some minor extensions to use Flex algo together with L2 bundle to advertise the T attributes associated with different VTNs. And we have the details in the following slides. So,
Joel, did you have a clarifying question, or are you just getting in early to talk? Oh, there you are.
Joel Halpern. This is related to a question I asked in Six-Man and have asked in other contexts, but it's very important here. This is sorry, I realized Joel Halpern from Ericsson. There are two different notions that get mixed up, and I hope we can clarify which one this is talking about. VTN in general is a concept, I don't care. There's Flex algo, which gives you a topology and a forwarding path, and that's Flex algo. And then there has been discussion of what is in T's called NRP, Network Resource Partition. We were very careful and explicit in the T's work to say, this does not create a separate topology. You you can have multiple NRPs within the same topology so that things will scale, because we don't want to blow up the number of topologies, because lots of topologies has all sorts of cost. This seems to say that if the VTN needs different resources, then that will be a separate topology. And that would be painful. We need to be able to say, this is the resource behavior A, resource behavior B, resource behavior C, within the shared common topology 1. I'm unclear from these slides, and I did not have time to review the draft, as to whether that is supported by this.
Yeah, Joe, maybe you can check this slides. At the bottom, we say that this mechanism is applicable to networks which requires a small number of VTNs, so that even if each VTN is associated with a separate topology of FlexAlgo, the scalability will be acceptable. So this can, with this mechanism, we can make some simplification to the control plane and the data plane, so that we can reuse something existed already. So this is the purpose of this draft, and I think the draft also describes the scalability itself. So maybe you can also check the content of the draft. Hope I have clarified this. Okay, I will continue with this. So to advertise the T attributes of each VTN, L2 bundle is extended a bit, because L2 bundle can be used for as a bundle of the layer 2 physical or virtual member links. And here, each of the member link can be associated with a separate VTN. And here we define a new flag called the exclusive flag to indicate whether this member links can be used for load sharing, load balancing, or if each member link is used exclusively for the associated VTN. And for the correlation between a FlexAlgo and the layer 2 member links, this is based on the extended admin group or color. Basically, each layer 2 member link are configured with a unique color, which is used as an include rule in the corresponding FAD. And admin group of the parent layer 3 link is set to the union of all the colors of its layer 2 member links. With this mechanism, we can ensure that each FlexAlgo is associated with the parent layer 3 link, and the forwarding plane, the traffic will be forwarded using the corresponding layer 2 member link. And the T attributes of the layer 2 member links are advertised based on the existing RFC 8668. Here are the updates in the recent revisions. Basically, we solved the comments received both online and offline. We also clarified the role of the flag in the L2 bundle TLV. We also clarified the correlation mechanism between the FlexAlgo and the layer 2 member links. There's some improvement in the descriptions about the forwarding plane behaviors based on the algorithm-specific prefixes and adjacencies which are associated with the VTN. And some editorial changes are most made in these revisions. For the next steps, we think the mechanism and the content has been stable, and authors would like to ask for working group adoption of this document. Thank you. Comments?
Peter, you're in the queue. You're up.
It's Peter Pshenak, Cisco. So I found the solution that you are proposing rather hacky by trying to mess up with the affinities of the L2 members and then being a union of the L3 member and all that stuff. You are doing this for a very, very specific case where you have L2 bundle members. This is not a generic solution. I think, and I believe there are other and better solutions how to solve this.
Yeah, take that. Good idea. Make that comment to the
we
list,
have
please.
discussed this before, I think. This is to minimize the changes to the protocols, and we reuse what we already have. It's on the combination of just the one minor extension of the flag. So If you have other proposals, maybe you can also suggest them on the list or offline. Welcome.
So I'm going to take basically Joel's point earlier along with Peter's now, and just I'm just wondering out loud as a working group member, if just we don't necessarily have to have multiple solutions to something if we come up with a really good solution that covers all the cases. So obviously other people are thinking about this too outside the context of this presentation and this solution. Let's not create bespoke solutions if we have a nice good one that covers all the cases. So I think going forward we need to keep our eye on that.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe one solution will be more scalable, but these two solutions have their own applicabilities, such as even if we have defined the multi-topology, we still have the flex algo defined to provide some similar functionality. That is why we propose two solutions, one based on MT, one based on flex algo, because both are adopted mechanisms in the working group. Some people may use either one of them. It's based on their choice.
Okay, AC?
Yeah, I got a quick one. Gee, I think that's a circular argument. I hope you know what that is, of saying we have to because we want to have to and let people use it. I think the reason you do flex algorithm is because it's less data plane resource, and that should say that, because certainly you wouldn't want this hacky solution with flex algo if you could use MT. I mean, MT is just so much simpler. So I think you need to justify why you'd even consider flex algo. But after you've answered Joel's question, that would be a second level question.
Yeah, I think there are two separate questions. The Joel's one I have clarified. Maybe I can clarify it further in the minutes. Yeah, for this one, I just give an answer why flex algo and both flex algo and MT-based solution are proposed. They have different, slightly different characteristics, right? But we can have a further discussion on the list.
Okay, thanks. Let's move to the next presentation. Tony.
Thank you.
Tony Lee. Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't have the agenda. You can't see it. Wait. Cancel Tony. There we go. All right, Tony, you should see a list to select from there. There we go.
All right. Good morning. Let's see. This is a work in progress discussion. This was formerly called multi-instance TLDs. We've changed the name to be called multi-part TLDs. This has been sitting on the back burner for far too long. I apologize. A lot of that's my fault. Trying to get this going now. If people would like to participate, please do so. What problem are we trying to solve? There are many cases where we did not specify how to deal with the case where you filled up the TLV. You got 255 bytes of data, and subsequent work has caused some of these to fill up and overflow. And some of the specs do not describe what to do when you run out of space. So we tried to write some normative text. The goal here is to write something that says, okay, if you're going to run out of space, insert multiple parts of the TLV, i.e. two or more things that have the same TLV code point, and you treat that as a concatenated contents. We need to have this solution for all the old TLVs that have not specified things. We want to have a default in place so that if somebody forgets, there is a backstop. We're not trying to override solutions for TLVs that already have said something explicit. Pretty straightforward. Just use multiple parts. If you have something inside the TLV that specifies the contents and what we're calling a key, you should replicate that key in each part. Okay. For example, type 22 TLVs, you've got 7 octets of system ID and pseudonode number, and there's a metric, and do you replicate that or not? That's to be discussed. So you need to figure out what the key is, and we need to agree on what that key is so all implementations concur, but we are trying not to be normative about discussing the key. The problem with being normative about talking about that is that then we become a catalog of every TLV, and we don't want to do that. Excuse me. So we're going to add more examples, trying to make sure everybody agrees. Let's see. And the other thing we were discussing is adding a router capability to agree to using this. Not everybody's on board with this, but we are discussing it. In discussion is welcome. Please feel free to chime in. We need light, not heat. Thank you. Any questions?
Go ahead, Chris.
Cool. Actually, go ahead, Katan.
A question about the capability thing. Was this, and I asked this on the mail list as well, was this intended more as an informational or to trigger some actions on the router?
So the intent here was there's a concern that doing multi-part TLVs could cause some legacy implementations indigestion. What happens if you see 2 TLV 22s and you're not quite ready for it? If your code doesn't do that, you could do lots of different things. In the extreme situation, you could crash. You could only retain the first part. You could only retain the second part. The semantics are very, very weird. And so the proposal was have a capability so that you just don't advertise multiple parts until you see everyone advertising this capability.
Okay. So my understanding is that there are already implementations deployed which do multi-part. So is this something that we have seen or has been reported?
There are implementations that do multi-part. There are implementations that don't do multi-part. This is known. This is not at issue.
No, I mean, have the problems been? So I understand for an operator to know the capability of the routers and use that information, it's useful. But I think it's maybe problematic to have the router change behavior based on this. I mean, introducing it at this stage.
Well, this is why we're discussing this.
Okay, so I was sort of curious. I think you spoke to this earlier, but since we have, you said you don't want to be a catalog, but we also have all the TLVs so far defined. You know, have we gone through and said, well, this is this is a TLV that's obviously a multi-part. They didn't talk about it. I mean, would it? Especially with the capability thing, I kind of like, it feels like if you put the capability thing in, you really want to go back through all the old TLVs and say, here are the keys, you know, or this doesn't need a key, or, you know, or something like that.
Well, again, we're trying not to be a catalog because then somebody asks, why didn't you list this one? And, you know, we'd rather have people apply intelligence. The capability should not make a difference as to the behavior. It should just be a trigger for being able to advertise multi-part TLVs, just to ensure that everything in the domain is ready, or in the area is ready to hear multi-part.
Go ahead, Les.
Thing to say at this point about the capability is, there are multiple opinions on this, even among the authors, and the authors are going to be meeting and discussing this. I think we should wait until the next version of the draft is out. If the capability is still there, we will also, be addressing, some of the concerns about how to use this. And then we can have a more meaningful discussion. I'd really suggest tabling this discussion for a bit.
Indeed, we're trying to make everybody happy all at the same time, and if that's possible, we will do the best we can. And if folks have preferences as to what they would like to see in the draft, please let us know.
AC?
So I'll reiterate my comment on the list. If you, in your discussions, you decide that you won't advertise, if not everybody advertises the capability, you won't advertise the multi-part, you have to specify what you do with this additional information. If you just don't advertise it or how you choose, there has to be some statement there.
My thinking is you just don't advertise it.
Don?
Okay, so just a quick follow-up on that. How do routers decide which information not to advertise, right? And what if router A in implementation A decides to advertise TLV, let's say 10, and the other router decides to order TLV 12, right? Then probably nothing will work. A lot of stuff will get broken. So even amongst routers which do multi-part, right? They would have normally got everything, but yeah.
Right. Well, the thing to do is to advertise the old legacy information, because that's what's been there forever. And then the new stuff that's causing you to overflow into a second part, that probably should not get advertised.
Okay, so I mean, a very quick follow-up. So now we would then again, just as the key, we would get down to cataloging and saying which is old and what is new, right? We start going down that path again.
And I'm trying to finesse this by adding language that says that without being normative about every single TLV type.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can discuss further on the list. Thanks. And thanks for taking this work up. Thank you.
Sure.
Wimo?
Hi. Looks like this solution is not backward compatible, right?
It's backward compatible. It's not forward compatible. Multi-part TLVs are not forward compatible.
For example, if we have you have a PLV is bigger than 255, right? So you have multiple paths, but if we have an older router, and then that will not recognize that one, right?
Exactly why the capability.
Yeah, so that means that we have new things, and then the old router cannot support it, and then we have some problems. So,
which is why we have the capability, so all routers can stand up and say, we're new, we're ready, please send us new data.
I think maybe it's better to have a solution, and then we have new things, multiple paths. Also, for the old routers, they don't have this capability, maybe just ignore, and then we can have a better solution, right?
Old routers will not just ignore, okay? They will take and see multi-parts and possibly do many bad things, including crashing. So we kind of want...
The old router cannot, because this new thing, old router don't know these things. So how the old router process these new things, right?
We don't want to advertise the new things until we know all the routers in the area are capable. That's the point of having the capability.
Yeah, I know that's one solution. I think maybe normally the solution is that we have new things, the old router, if you don't know this thing, just ignore, and then that's everyone happy, right?
That would be nice, but we don't have a good mechanism for causing old routers to ignore multi-parts.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
maybe
we're out of time.
Yeah, maybe I can think about that.
Thank you. Les, is it really quick?
Discussing things with a bunch of engineers. We can't stop following the logic. But there's a discussion that needs to be had here. Let's wait until the next version of the draft, and hopefully, if capability is still there, we'll have more content to address all of these points.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but that's kind of exclusionary, right? I mean, we could also have that discussion on the mailing list with people that aren't authors. So, but
absolutely,
we're out of agenda time though. So
yep,
I do take your point there.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to the next. Thanks, Tony. Now it's Tony P.
No, fool me once.
No, fool you twice.
Stop, only behind me.
Oh
yeah, good.
Hang on.
Oh,
Share.
it's all right.
This is the distributed flooding.
Yeah.
Share. I think this works. No, it won't. Never mind. How could that possibly work? I didn't put anything in my computer.
Nothing works.
Yeah, never mind. Just tell me.
Yeah, technology. We know all about it. Hey, so I'm wearing my presentation T-shirt to generate moire, patterns. Talking quickly about the stuff that we were running for a while, which is the kind of, yet another flavor.
Can people hear in the back?
All right, now I'm rockstar mode. Good. So this has been going on for a while. You can see there's another, flavor of this flood reduction stuff. It does a little bit more. Shraddha on it, White, and me. Please flip on. I joined because I work on the draft now for a little bit. Influence it. Next one, please. Okay, so history and what is it and next steps. Next one, please. So the history for the few. So the whole idea is basically based on work that's been done before on money, so like published RFCs. The 5 series, the variant of that is actually already as well implemented, and we have it well debugged and running forward with it in Rift. So in a sense, it's nothing earth-shattering here. We just took it forward. So new modified algorithm basically based on the mana principle. We do not need any kind of signaling, or protocol extensions really. It does not require all the nodes in the area to support it. So you can just basically drop nodes that do that and arbitrarily mix them with the old stuff. Why it's important to have an draft in RFCs, because if you drop people doing that, they all have to do the same thing, right? It's kind of a distributed hashing tables. Everybody has to run the same algorithm. Completely distributed, nothing centralized. Again, no signaling, right? No indication that stuff is even running. So the stuff is kind of a further development of Open Fabric, which was the stuff that came out of LinkedIn and has been actually implemented in FRR, but that used kind of link local flooding, and it was early version. We kind of, tuned that stuff further, and we do also something above, which is not only flood reduction, but also kind of distribution of the flood load across the topology, and not only just following a single tree or 2 trees. So this FRR has this early implementation, and now there's an implementation by an unnamed but obvious vendor, right? And we tested it, works well. I mean, it's not deployed yet, but we're pretty confident. We have numbers and so on. Next one, please. 7 minutes, okay. So algorithm in one ugly picture. Bunch of cores, I hope you can follow me. So at the very bottom is the originator of the LSP, right? So somebody originates it, and obviously, the first hop, you have to flood it to everyone. There's nothing to be done. And then in the middle, if you read it on the left, a transmitting neighbor This is the node that sends you the LSP, right? And the black guy, the F, is the receiver. So I'm at F, but it's very important that the transmitting neighbor is kind of important here, right? So the F receiving these LSPs needs first a shortest path tree from the originator to transmitter. So those are the green links, right? So you have to compute that from the view of the transmitting neighbor. And then you compute basically two things, and some colors says something has been cut off. So you compute this yellow front, which are all the intermediate, immediate neighbors of the transmitting neighbor, right? So that kind of gives you like the one hop thing. And from there on, right, and you, there is a lot of optimization I'm omitting, you know, like you can kick out all these guys that are on the shortest path tree to the originator, because you know that that's all the propagation front. And then you compute the two hop neighbors, the THL. So from this point of view of this first hop neighbors, you take the next after those, right? So this is in principle basically his view of the propagation front, and you just somewhere in it, right? He propagates through its intermediate neighbors and the two hop neighbors, and you somewhere in here, and you have to know whether you are one of these guys that is responsible to cover the two hop neighbors, right? So the logic is until you make this mental step that you're really computing on behalf of the guy transmitting towards you, you'll not understand. The moment you make this mental leap, it becomes easy, right? You're one of the guys in the middle, one hop away from him, and you have to make a decision whether you cover the two hop for him or you don't, right? And basically the algorithm reduces a bunch of people out in a distributed fashion. If you're one of those, you have to retransmit, and if you're not, you just shut up, because you know that other people already covered the two hop neighbors, right? And the rest is just mechanics, and there's a lot of optimization. Like if you know that the two hop neighbor is actually only one hop away from the originator, you can cut it out and so on and so on. But that is pretty much the whole thing. So for people who are less visual oriented, you know, and can follow my, you know, Da Vinci quality picture, you know, early Da Vinci. Okay, next one. I give you the stuff, you know, for the algorithmic thing. So you assume all metrics 1 on the graph. Overload is, of course, ignored because you flat on overload. Then you build the shortest path tree from the originator to the transmitting node, right? And then you build the RNL and THL, this one hop and the two hop from the view of the transmitting neighbors towards you, okay? Then you take this one hop away from the transmitting neighbor list on which you are, and you order it based on system ID. Everybody does that, and here comes the delicate trick that you didn't see in the picture. To load balance who propagates, you also use the LSP ID. So now, depending on the LSP ID that is being flooded, different people are picked from the first hop to propagate to the second hop. All right, there is subtleties here I completely omit, but that basically gives you a flat balancing across the graph. So it's not like a single tree where everything goes, you know, through. It is depending on which LSPs are flooded, they will pick up kind of different trees you can imagine. It's a simplified picture, but it's sufficient. So you reduce the volume by what we find is about 70%. But not by choking on, you know, a bunch of links, the whole flooding, but basically balancing us across the whole graph. And for people who say, well, this is like way too much computation, under stable topology, you know, you compute only on demand, right, these things, depending from whom you see the LSPs, which LSPs you see, and you can cache all these results, it's stable, because they only depend on the topology and on the originator, on the LSP ID, right? No sequence number, nothing. So once you kind of cache these things out, stuff doesn't need any computation. And the experience from the implementation is actually the load to compute those things is actually relatively minuscule. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I had my concerns. So read the draft. There's a lot of consideration there, you know, the LSP ID and so on, right? So you don't do it per LSP ID, you do it on some hashing function, the very, you know, you bin bucket those guys and so on, but that's, you know, read the draft, contribute, have an opinion. I mean, I don't want to swamp you with this stuff. Next one. So what happens if the whole thing partitions, right? Like things are great when things are great, but something breaks and somebody forgets to send something. So the way we fix it is that we keep the list of whom did we omit doing all these optimizations, right? And we run some small timers, and don't forget PSNP, so you know, it's very dense packets. You can describe a couple of these LSPs just by their signature. And basically periodically, so if these guys got their stuff, they will already tell, some other way they may possibly tell you, oh, you know, do you have this thing? And you already have it, right? So you act it, so a lot of this stuff cancels out already. But if these guys didn't update you yet that they have it, you basically bucket those things and you throw it at them and go like, here's the version. If they have it, nothing happens, you get ACK, minimal, or otherwise they will request it and repair the graph, right? So things go pear-shaped, apple-shaped, whatever. You will have some small hiccup, right, until the timer catches up and kind of, you know, puts the stuff through what is not really the minimal graph that you computed, and then hopefully, you know, the whole thing settles again and chucks happily. And this does not change any of this PSNP, you know, send or receive procedures. Right, we don't need to, we operate just on the standard PSNP stuff. We just play this little trick that we only send them where, you know, where we know we didn't send stuff to make sure that the guy has it in case he didn't send us yet, the PSNPs or CSNPs or whatever. Next one. Oh yeah, I'm almost there. This is the last one. Next one. I'm still 5 minutes. Man, what will I do? Sing a song? No, you don't want that. I gave
you those just now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so I won't sing the song. Nobody got properly scared when I said that, but it's okay. So, right, please look at the stuff. Embarrassingly simple. OSP version would be valuable, you know, fairly obvious. I mean, all the same mechanism. And Schrader jumped the shark a little bit here, put the workgroup adoption on it. But yeah, you know, stuff's straightforward if you think through it. Took us through a couple of round optimization. I influenced the draft, nada, but the stuff is largely in place. It's implemented, it kind of works. And important to say, this works for arbitrary topologies, obviously. This is not any, you know, claw optimization or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, open for comments. I'm kind of done.
AC.
I like this version in order of magnitude better than the original version. I like this version. It does, and it is close to the, you know, I mean, it's different, but it has a lot of the same, using the 2-hop neighbors and covering all the 2-hop neighbors and doing that dynamically is a lot like the draft you mentioned, the CDS that Richard Ogier did for Manet. It's really good. The one question I had is, you know, all those other ones, they tried to get 2 copies of it, where this tries to get 1. This,
brilliant question.
Yes.
Okay, so observe that. So I omitted this step, right? When you sort these neighbors, and then you take the hash of the LSP to know where you start, and that will give you balancing. Right. So you don't start with the smallest system ID. Depending on the LSP ID, well, not really, like a hash of it. So you don't have too many buckets. You start somewhere in the middle, or, you know, whatever for every LSP. So you use different guys. And while you're taking these guys off the list, in a sense, you are looking which of the 2-hop neighbors does this guy cover. And the moment you have full coverage of the 2-hop neighbors, you go like, okay, I'm done, right? Those are all the guys that are really reflooding. Now, nothing prevents you, and every node can do it differently from generating a double coverage. You go like, I'm taking these neighbors off the list, and I'm counting the 2-hop neighbors, whether they have been covered twice. That's what Rift does. And all 3 times, or whatever. It can be a local configuration, right? And each guy can actually do it independently. Some guys can cover once, some guys can cover twice. It does not really matter. It will just generate additional copies. But yes, okay. I think this is in the draft, maybe not well explained yet, but that's how double, triple coverage would work.
Okay. And the other comment I had, this is a quick one, is you're basically doing a PSNP of all the LSPs that didn't get flooded. So that's essentially
correct.
Almost
to the neighbors you didn't flood. Yes.
That's almost a CSNP. that you're doing every second? That seems like a lot.
I didn't think through that. Well, don't forget that you load balance, right? So an LSP will go to a, if you did not reflood this specific LSP, then you say like, okay, all the 2 hop neighbors, I didn't reflood this LSP, I have to PSNP them. But don't forget it balancing all LSPs. So you will omit some fraction of the flooding, and that will be used to generate this PSNP saying, you know, I omitted this LSP to you guys. So it is a fraction. You know, how much of a fraction will depend on the hashing function. If it's evenly distributed, it should be on an even fraction. Got it?
Okay.
So it's not really a CSNP of the whole database. It's just the fraction that you didn't reflood based on the hashing algorithm for this LSP.
Oh, okay. It's the ones that changed. It's the ones that did change, but you did not reflood to that neighbor. Okay, that makes it a lot smaller,
Correct.
right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was all. When I read it, I just took that. I said, "Why are you doing all the ones that didn't change?"
Well, you see how my name ended up on the authors list, right?
Yeah.
So I had to give it a couple of helpful twists. Yes.
Let's
Okay. Yeah, if you can fix that, that'd be good. Thanks.
Okay, Ben.
Hi, Ben Madison, Work Online. Couple of questions, and my apologies if these are in the draft. I haven't read it. The first is, it seems like there are topologies where running this algorithm would save you more work than others. And there are probably, probably the more regular the topology, the more work you save. And in a lot of service providers, the network I run, I'd imagine you probably don't save a lot of work by doing all of the extra computational work. Have you looked at where that balance is so that you can make recommendations to operators about whether this is appropriate?
Look at the average fan out on your network. The higher the fan out, the more you save. That's pretty much the output. So the claw, of course, will save a lot. If you have a very sparse network, there are very few flooding paths, and like, what the hell do you want to cut out, right? Most the generate case is something which is, Hamiltonian path or, Memel cut, so like, there's one way to flood it. So what do we optimize?
I think you overestimate the graph theory capabilities of most network operators. I think
but
I think some pros about that would be helpful.
The smaller your average fan out degree, the less this thing will be useful to you, right? And the bigger the diameter of the network, the sparser it is, the less useful this thing will be, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's
yeah. And as to the computation, we were concerned, but don't forget, you only compute when the stuff hits you the first time on demand. So of course you have the spanning tree of the originator, right? And then when it hits you with LSP ID with fits in a new bucket, then you have to recompute those lists. But that's why I put it in the draft that you take the LSP ID and you run a very strong hash. So from the same originator, you will only build maybe 2 buckets, right? So the same originator will kind of use 2 trees, maybe double coverage, right? And if you have 1 million originators in the network, I wish ISIS, right? I mean, we're bound by relatively few nodes. So, worst case, like go wild and say, okay, I have whatever, 5K nodes and times 2 for the LSP ID buckets, you have 10K of those things to pre-compute. And they're relatively small. They're like minimal list, right? And once they're in place, they're in place.
Yeah.
If you start to flap links, well, things get interesting.
Yeah, I operate a network in a part of the world where the sparsest parts of the network tend to be the most unstable. So I would be hesitant to, without quite a good reason, introducing more computation work to places in the network that already have transient moments of a hell of a lot of work to do. But I think you've answered my question.
Right, but still, I mean, you limit it. If you have few paths and a lot of flooding, you're limited anyway. You're pretty much dead. There's no magic. I mean, quantum computing would help you. Wait a couple of years.
Okay, so my other question was, in the case where you are where you're computing this load balancing of responsibility for the reflooding.
Yeah.
Have you considered a scenario where the node that's responsible for reflooding for one of these buckets, because of some sort of a bug or a miscomputation, fails to do so?
PSNPs.
Does that was my question.
That is exactly what's covered.
That partition recovers from that scenario.
Yes. Correct.
Even if the reflooding node didn't know that it's broken.
Yes, even if it's the if you introduce a node that is utterly broken, right, and doesn't reflect properly with the other guys, the PSNPs will fix it. And we have something in draft saying, like, if you see this happening excessively, well, you better call Ben and say, like, 4 a.m., here's a problem for you. Like,
That's precisely
work
the
for a
scenario I'm
living.
trying to avoid, yeah.
Well, you should go with reputable vendors, what I would say. You know, I don't want to make, you know,
If you can introduce me to any, I'd be very happy to talk to them.
Well, the less disreputable vendors. Does that cover it? Okay.
Okay, Les.
Quick points. Maybe we should, you know, take it to the list, but I'm not totally convinced that you don't need to advertise whether on a per node basis, whether you support this or not. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm not, then I don't understand why you wouldn't define this as an algorithm that would utilize the dynamic flooding draft infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, I can answer that, yeah.
Okay.
So first, bring me a case why we need to actually signal anything on technical basis. If you find a case why this is required, it's an interesting discussion. The second
Because
part of the answer is...
Sorry, if I'm not going to flood because I expect somebody else to flood, and I don't know whether, you know, we're in sync.
No, think that through. That mixes with old nodes just fine. If you introduce new nodes, they start to reduce everybody computing the same independently. The old guys will still flood the full graph, and that's fine. And you don't have to know who is doing that not. I know it's unusual.
Yeah, I'll take a closer look. The second quick comment is you use the term up-to-date PSNPs as your remediation mechanism. I have no idea how you would determine that a PSNP is quote unquote up to date, because unlike a CSNP, a PSNP doesn't have a range in it. So you can't tell that, oh yeah, this covers everything between, you know, system ID X and system
no,
ID
you have to list all of those things.
Yeah,
you have
but
to list all of those things.
PSNPs don't give you that information.
You mean the one that are completely missed? Well, no, so think, right? You got this thing, so you know the stuff exists. And you push this PSNP on the guy saying, I have this PSNP. And if he doesn't have it, he will request it, right? If he has an older version, he will request it. If he has the same version, he will act, and you're done.
Yeah, that's not my point. Let's
okay, so I lost you.
Yeah.
I thought about that. Yeah, you can't know what you don't know, but we don't have this problem. You know, I was thinking about what you call it, whatever the distributed system stuff, right? No, I thought through the stuff. We don't have this problem unless you convince me we do. Then it will become interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, Les. I have a quick. OSPF version is fairly obvious. Feels like a comment from you.
No, it's actually. I may be half culpable. Okay.
We can take it to the list, but we were talking PSNP and CSNP. To me, OSPF, you have a database exchange that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You don't have this sort of live. I can't just set a timer and throw some packets out and get caught up.
And you are absolutely correct. And yes, I didn't think through this stuff. I was just pestered by a couple of SPs saying like, "Oh, what about SPF?" And
Actually, let me break in. We do have an experimental draft for this. I think Alvaro is an author on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could take that. I'm sure this will be experimental, so it could reference this. The experimental draft do incremental database.
So replace the fairly with relatively.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. Next up, I think is Peter with UPA. Yes.
So hello, it's Peter here. I'm going to talk about the unreachability prefix announcement on behalf of all the co-authors. Next slide. So the problem statement, the summarization is a reality. People do summarize, unlike with MPLS networks where it was hard to do due to the requirements of the end-to-end LSP. With other technologies these days, summarization is possible. Networks are growing, the number of routers is growing significantly, and summarization helps. I think that's the fact. Arguing about it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. Obviously, summarization is not only good, it creates problems, and one of the problems is that it hides information, it hides the reachability of the individual routers or prefixes. So the problem that we are trying to solve here is to be able to summarize and still be able to signal that something has been lost, and that can be used by various applications. Here we are mainly talking BGP peak, but it can be used by any other applications. What this draft talks about is it gives a backward compatibility solution without any need to extend the protocols. So it only defines why we are doing it, basically. Next slide, please. So if you look at the RFC 5305 and 5308, it basically gives you a way to advertise a prefix as an unreachable prefix. There is a range of metrics that if you advertise the TLV with that metric, it basically, the RFC says, this prefix is unreachable from the traditional computation. You can use this for other purposes. That's the language that the RFC is using. And all we do, we are defining a new purpose here. Next slide, please. So what will and how will this work? The existing nodes which will receive this will just, flood this, propagate, but don't use it. That's the behavior that the current specs are mandating. The recognition of this advertisement and the usage is only needed on the nodes that want to use this information. So typically this would be the PEs. If they are interested, they can be configured to use this information and pass it to whatever applications may be interested in it. The L1, L2 routers, they would not propagate this today. So that's the change in the behavior of the protocol. That probably is the good reason why this draft exists in the first place, is because we need to propagate this information between the areas. So if an L1, L2 router attached to area X advertises this UPA advertisement, it goes across the L2, and another L1, L2 router which attaches to area Y may need to leak this information down. So that's something that we are specifying. That's something new, but again, this is not defining a new TLV or anything. We are just defining that you should propagate the unreachable prefixes. And we can even bound the UPA to a very specific metric if that is what the implementation wants to do. Next slide, please. So very similarly, I don't go into the details because it's basically the same thing, but if you look at the OSPF v2 and OSPF v3 spec, it defines an LS infinity metric, which basically works for external and summary LSAs. And the spec says that this is one way of flushing the information or making it unreachable. So you can either flush the LSA or you can advertise it with this metric. It has the same meaning. Basically, it's unreachable. Next slide, please. And then again, similarly to what has been said for ISIS, the nodes will propagate this data. It will not use or install these prefixes because they are unreachable if they follow the spec. We need to recognize these on the routers where we want to use this information, which is again configurable and would be probably done on the edge nodes. And again, ABRs would need to be smart enough to recognize this and re-advertise between the areas. Next slide. So a couple of implementation or recommendations that are worth mentioning is, obviously, we don't want to advertise tons of these. If there is a catastrophic failure, an ABR or an N1 L2 router loses connectivity to everything, doesn't make sense to advertise all the specific prefixes as an unreachable. So there should be a bound. The the use case for this is when a PE fails, not when the area partitions or some catastrophic failure happens. And we don't need to keep this advertisement for a long time. We need this advertisement basically for time needed to propagate them, and plus some buffer, obviously. And then we can basically withdraw them at the source. Yeah, next slide. And yeah, let's just start the show. Tony.
Tony P. Junipers. It's kind of the side conversation we had in the hallway. And AC will tell me that I'm an old man and I didn't do protocols for 25 years. Same thing as with the reverse metric stuff. The infinity things can trigger really interesting bugs, right? In lots of implementations. It's a courtesy draft. I mean, it's completely valid standard protocol behavior, that you kind of use for other purposes. I'm not overly concerned because if you pull up all the ABRs, even if the router is in the middle, do crazy stuff and forward, I mean, you will kill the stuff on the ABR, right? Because the stuff, that stuff is unreachable. So yeah, if we want to do it this way, it's least of all possible evils to abuse the protocol, to do this kind of stuff. Thanks.
So just to let you know that there is an implementation from an unnamed vendor. And we have proved this, that
a reputable vendor?
Or... Yeah, well, I leave that up to you.
This is like unnamed sources. You have to take it with a grain of salt, right?
Okay, yeah.
So your comment is basically, if we have to do unreachable, you like this one, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, by a far stretch. Yeah, okay. By a far stretch. I think it's mildly dangerous. It's abusing the protocol. And it should not be done this way if we really are concerned about the service going down rather than actually losing the router completely, because we abuse reachability.
This is not for service. This is for reachability.
This is subtle, right? Well, I mean, you kill the reachability of the router, right? So if there's 5 different things, then you're basically concerned about advertising my BGP thing went down, but there's other stuff, you kill it wholesale. But there's
well, this is what happens anyway today if you don't summarize, right? You lose the reachability of a box, and then whatever else follows. There's no difference.
Yeah, I mean, now we start a little bit split herring, which may matter in deployments, but if practically speaking, this is easily done, and it will be done anyway because certain reputable vendors, they don't listen to reason always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Aiden. Aiden?
Agent, go ahead with your comment.
Oh?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah. I think as you mentioned in the related RFC, LS infinity just indicate that the related LSA should be ignored during the SPF calculation, and so there is no RFC to indicate that such the LSA infinity indicated the prefix is unreachable. So we think, and also as point out in the mail list, several other persons also point out that we need one explicit indication for the prefix unreachable. So this is my comment. Okay.
Okay. I believe we can safely use LS infinity to indicate this. If you read the specification very, very, thoroughly, you will realize we can do that. In terms of adding a very specific or explicit signaling for unreachability on top of this, I still haven't heard any technical argument that would convince me we need. I know a couple of or few people have suggested that. If they come up with the feasible technical argument, I'm all for it. I haven't heard any so far.
There may be other situation that use LS infinity to indicate other things. So I think we should mix up this field to the other proposal. Okay.
Okay, you can put that on a list, and we can discuss. The one example that you use that is for the IP flex algo on OSPF v3. I don't see a problem there, but let's move that to the list because this can get lengthy.
Okay.
All right, G.
Hello, yeah. Actually, I sent a mail to the list. I also raised a similar comment as iJune, because reading the RFCs, it shows that this LS infinity metric is just to ask the receiver not to install this prefix or not to consider this prefix in the computation and not to remove it from another prefix which may cover this prefix. Right. This is so this is a new behavior comparing to the previous statement in RFC, maybe. And RFC also mentioned that this LS infinity can be used for multiple use cases. So in order to accurately indicate which use cases you are using it for and what is the expected behavior of the receiver, maybe a more accurate indicator will be needed in the packet.
So I guess I already commented on both of your comments, so I'm not going to repeat that.
Okay, Jibo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
One question. Does the S infinity metric of IP plus ego also need to be processed as UPA?
For IP flex algo, what we defined, if I recall correctly, is that we advertise the base TLV with an infinity metric and include the metric of the flex algo inside. So obviously, the metric for the base algo or algo 0 in this advertisement is never used, so it cannot be interpreted as unreachable. It's just a field that we put there because we are not advertising algo 0 in that base TLV. So that metric is always ignored. And it obviously has no relation to algo 0. You would have to go inside and look at the metric for the individual IP algos and where the LS infinity can be used as a UPA.
Okay.
AC. Your mic is not on yet, AC.
Completely with Peter. And the beauty of this is we use the same mechanism we use for backward compatibility for the signaling. Now, obviously, only the routers that support the specification will act on the event notification. But I mean, that would be it. No matter how you solve this problem, that would be the case. So it's the two usages are complementary. They don't contradict one another. They're both a signaling of unreachability.
Right.
I guess as a working group member, I don't like any of these.
I know.
And you addressed my comment at the very beginning by saying you don't want to argue about the scaling requirement, but I don't know. I'm still not sure, like Tony Lee's idea of like, let's just do a reachability protocol or the BFD ideas. I just wonder.
There are multiple ways of doing this.
Yeah.
We've been asked by the providers to solve this in IGP because they don't want to run any of the other things.
Even BFD.
Even BFD. It's not that we are doing this because we like this. We're doing this because we've been asked to address this way.
It would be great if those operators would be showing up here and going, you know what I'm saying? Like
I know.
It used to happen. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the
okay.
Relevant. Yes, thanks. So, Ijin, you will be up next. Let me give you the control here. All right, go ahead and pick your deck.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay
Yes.
now? Okay.
Yep.
So I will print the prefix unreachable announcement. This is maybe the fourth time to make the presentation. How to? Okay. So here is the history of the proposed solution. We proposed first on 2019 October in Singapore in IETF 106, and also in after several IETF meetings. And we also discussed the solution intensely on the LSR list. And previously, we focused both on the control plane and the data plane convergence. And after discussion, we converted to the focus on the control plane switch over. And we also discussed intensely for the use case of the such information. And I think currently we all understand that there are several use cases need such useful information. And along the discussion, there are also other alternative solutions. For example, BGP-based POS and NLP, and the UPA just is introduced by Peter. And we think the solution on converging for the PO and the UPA solution now. So here I just want to introduce the update content. We make the major update for the following content. The first is we describe briefly the applied scenarios. So because in the main list discussion, many people wonder which service will use such information. So I think the following three applications can use such information. First is the BGP service, and the second is the tunnel service, and the third is the SRv6. SRv6 just also one kind of tunnel service. So the P and the P device will interested in such information. So we think the BFD-based solution and the other draw solution is not sufficient for the problem. So we think the IGP-based solution may be more suitable. And the root cause of the proposed solution is the following. It is the summary address and advertisement hide the unnecessary unreachability of its covered prefix, but the service that based on the detail specific prefix need to know the unreachability of this prefix to switch over promptly to other alternative endpoint. This is the root cause of the proposed solution. And for the solution, we need to also confine the negative advertisement to avoid in the IGP flooding churn. So I think many persons may worry about the side effect of the such a notification. So any application should consider this carefully. And we updated our solution is the message will must declare explicitly the associated prefix is unreachable with its prefix original set to null, and in order to avoid the traditional router or unsupported router misbehavior. So we set the associated metric to the LSC infinity. So this can prevent the unsupported node from misbehavior. I think such a action is conform to the rule of the related RFC. That is, if the LSA carries if the metric of the LSA is LSA infinity, then the SPF calculation will bypass the bypass the such LSA. So the unsupported node will not misbehavior. So and we also define the capability bit for the negotiation of the such capability. So if all nodes support the PUA capability, the LS infinity is unnecessary. And the second part for the updated solution is we consider also the scenario that if only some of the ABR can reach the mentioned prefix, that is when the network is participated. So the ABR can reach the prefix should advertise one specific route to the mentioned prefix. So this advertisement will let the traffic divert to the ABR that can reach the prefix. And we also mentioned that the service switchover must take place only when all ABR advertises the same message. We also make some update for the implementation consideration. As I had mentioned previously, we must control the advertisement of such message within the area. So we define the maxi address announcement threshold to control the advertisement of the PUA and the summary address. So if the number of the unreachable prefix is less than the MAA, then the ABR should advertise the summary address and the PUA. If a reachable address is less than the MAA, the ABR should advertise the detailed reachable address only. And if both of the reachable and the unreachable prefix exceed the MAA, then the ABR should advertise the MAA unreachable prefix and also set the summary address with the max matrix. And at the same time, the ABR should notify the operator that there are several incidents occur within the network. I think the last scenario will be occurred only in a network disaster. So and so I think this draft has been discussed about 2 years on the meeting or on the main list. So I think currently there are enough experts in this topic. So we think it is time to move forward this document, and we are glad to cooperate with Peter to make the overall solution to solve this problem. And we are also welcome other co-authors to forward this solution and document. Okay, that's all.
Okay, so me and the queue as a working group member, or no, I'm sorry, back that up. As a chair, some of the comments I read on the list and maybe a little bit of the feeling in a couple of these slides, it's been worked on for a long time, yes, because there hasn't been consensus. And there was a particular comment I saw that said, it sort of like it was trying to justify this as the correct solution just simply because it had been around longer, and that's never a reason. That it has to be technically the best solution, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, you definitely were there early on with this, right? And that is something that should not go unnoticed. But that doesn't favor your solution over a different solution just because you recognize the problem first. So that's a chair comment. I guess this is also so it's good that you want to work with other people, and I don't know if just because you started, I don't know if this is the right document. There seems to be a lot of commentary on the list about things like prefix originator and stuff that people don't like, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, we also compare the two solutions with Peters and PUA and UPA. I think the PUA have a more complete consideration. You know, I think the indication of the unreachable information just one point of the overall solutions, and we are also accept using other newly defined flag to indicate the unreachable prefix. You know, but this as I saw, this is just a part of the solution, and our solution also cover other aspect. And you know, this point are discussed within the main list intensity, so we updated the draft to include them. I think this is the main reason that we want to forward this solution. Okay.
Yeah, so there's no one else in the queue, so I guess I'll just go again, but this time as working member, I did find it a little sort of funny that like you made a comment on Peter's presentation about why Ellis Infinity wasn't good enough, but it was good enough to put in your draft. So it seems, you know, like, is it good enough or is it not good enough, right? I mean, that didn't seem very genuine to me. Peter's in the queue now.
So it's Peter Pshenak, Cisco. So Adrian, I mean, we expressed many times that the mechanics that you use to signal unreachability in terms of advertising the originator as 0 is broken. I don't understand why you are still having that in your draft. And the second comment I'm going to make, when we started the draft, I invited you and I acknowledged that you came up with the problem space, with a problem space as a first. I invited you to join the UPA draft. What you did instead, you took and put the unreachability metric to your draft and still keeping your source or originator 0 there. I still, honestly, I don't know where are you heading with this.
Yeah. We also studied the possibility to using the newly defined flag to indicate the eligible information, and I also point out in the main list that for OSPF v3 there are limited space to use in the flag. If we rely on the flag, we must extend the OSPF v3 flag first, and then define the 1 bit to single the eligibility. You know.
So
first
we need.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think we are open to accept the other option for the explicitly indicate for the eligibility, but I think it is just one point of the overall solution. You know,
well,
there are also other points need to be considered. Consideration.
All you need is to signal unreachability. You need a mechanism to that. You put the unreachable metric, you still want some explicit one. The question whether we need an explicit one or not is something that we need to decide as a working group. If we are going to decide, we're going to find another one, not the one that you use for sure. I'm still not convinced we need it, but let's keep that as an option. But then what is left in your draft? Right?
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing as we have in the other draft, where we just use to signal the unreachability. We don't need anything else.
No. We need to control. I think as you have said in your presentation, we need to define how to control the advertisement of the such information. We need to give the describe the situation when the network is participated. So
no,
I think
no, I don't think so. I don't believe so. Honestly.
No. There are possibility to the network be, you know, some ABR can reachable and some ABR can reach. So such situation we all need to consider it. You know, the single is just one point of the solution. Okay.
I don't believe.
Hey, I'm just gonna break in because it seems to be a circular discussion here, back and forth. Let's take the point of whether or not explicit is needed. I just wanted to point out that Ajahn said something wrong about OSPF v3. if we wouldn't use the LSA options anyway, we'd use some other flags, and there are other flags that are extendable anyway. Sorry, Peter, Ajin, for breaking in, but let's go to the next one.
Yep, so we've got 10 minutes left and one presentation we need to get
Also
through.
mine.
Yes. Think I have to stop you presenting maybe and then give it to you again so you can pick again. So let's get back and then offer. Now you should be able to select again.
Wait a moment. I don't see the. I
see that too. Now it should work. Let's try that.
Okay. Now, okay. I can select now. Yeah. Okay. So, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the update for the advertisement of the stop link attribute. Here I want to describe why we want to what the proper want to solve. You know, here I just describe 3 scenarios that we are encountered in our network. The first is the inter-AS connection scenario. In such scenario, the ASBR will build the BGP system with their loopback address, and there are several inter-AS link between them. So we want to recover the inter-AS topology within the 2 AS. The second scenario is for the internet exchange center. You know, there are maybe several AS connect within via the LAN interface, and we want to also recover the interconnection topology within them. The third scenario is for the anycast server scenario. You know, several server with the same address may be connected in the different network via the stop links. So we want to define one container to transfer the characteristic of the stop links in the above scenarios, and to solve the non-TE inter-AS topology recover. For example, in the between AS and among AS. And also we want to do some traffic engineering to different server based on the stop link characteristics. And as the main list point out the robot, and there are also other scenario that may help that can use such information to select the best BGP next hop. We can add it later in the document. So I think the related protocol extension is simple. We just define one new container. It is a new subtier, new TVLV to contain the link type and the link prefix associated with the stop link. All IDP take the similar format, and we in this TLV we defined the newly the link prefix sub TLV to contain the prefix of the stop link. And this newly defined TLV will be included in the corresponding LSA and PDU. As a comment from the from Keaton, we may change the container for this newly defined TLV to more general LSA. And here we want to point out clearly that the prefix of TLV is not the identifier of the stop link. It is just one kind of the stop link attribute, the same as other already defined stop link, already defined sub TLV for the link attribute. And here is the reason that we do not want to use the existing container. You know, as we have discussed in the main list several times, there are 2 RFC define the T-related TLV to contain such information about the inter-S link. But this sub-TLV must be present for every inter-S link. For example, the remote S number and IPv4 and IPv6 remote SBR sub-TLV. So if we solve the problem based on these two RC for the non-T scenario, then it will have the following cons. The first is not efficient for every inter-S stub link to include the redundant information, and it is not possible to describe the line stub link among IS. And for the anycast server scenario, we need some log information to describe the stub link between IS and the edge server, and also point out by Keaton in the main list, such unnecessary information will be populated and unnecessary the T database. So we don't want to use the existing RC to solve the problems. So I think this is the overall solution for the problem, and also this solution has been working adoption for the first time, and there I think the update content has addressed the comment during from the first adoption call, and if there is no other comment or question, we ask to the working group to forward it again. Okay.
AC, are you in the queue or was that just leftover?
Yeah, okay, I'm off. It was leftover.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Les.
My question is to the working group chairs. This draft has been presented multiple times. It's been discussed extensively on the list. There was a working group adoption call. The conclusion of the working group adoption call was not to adopt. Why are we still talking about this?
Adrian?
No. The question is to the chair.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm
completely
curious.
understand.
No, Les, I'm curious as well. My comment was going to address that actually, but
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No need to apologize. You did ask the chair.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, go ahead. Hang on a second. So we did everything Les just said is true. On the mailing list, he said the same thing, and there's words thrown around about baseless comments, and they weren't baseless. When the adoption call was failed, I even asked, please, be very mindful before you bring this draft back. The working group had given you an answer, and the rough consensus was not to adopt. And, then we had more mailing, you put out new versions, and we had more mailing lists, and you still hadn't convinced people. We still don't have rough consensus, and we're still spending working group resources on it. I mean, it's, when is enough enough?
Yeah, Les and Chris, I think I want to explain. The failure of the first adoption call is that there are some technical problem needed to solve, and it's not because it is unnecessary. So I think the reason we want to adopt one properly is that it can be used in the network, and I think it is common scenario that some document be adopted several times based on the comment from the adoption call process. So I think we have updated the draft and to address the comment. So if you have additional comment for the updated draft, I think I can discuss with you. If you have not, I think it is right now to forward it. Okay.
I'm not sure I followed that, but if we could do that in email. Yeah, I think we need to consider letting this one go because it's like you're trying to come up with a better solution that is, prettier or something. And I appreciate that, but like you keep talking about here, there's a way to do it this way and there's a way to solve this other problem this way. In other words, solutions exist, right? And you're trying to make a better, cleaner solution, but people aren't biting, right? They don't think it's worth doing.
No, I think the final user. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry.
One sentence. I think the final user for the every proposal is in the service provider. I think the service provider has more right to declare or to assert is it necessary or not. Okay.
Well, you're right. We give a lot of weight to service providers' opinions, but they still have to come with technical reasons, and those haven't been shown that the current solutions aren't good enough. Anyway,
no
so
I
hate to end on such a negative note, but we're out of time. It's 12:01, and so of course the mailing list is available. Thank you, Aijin. AC, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's take not an adoption call, but let's take the question of why we need an adoption call to the list, another one. Because, I'll reserve my comments for that mail, Fred, since we're over time.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll see even more people in London.
And hopefully we'll see more people on the list discussing drafts other than their own.
Yes.